Well, for more, let's cross to Nairobi and speak to the International Crisis Group's Alan Boswell. He's a project director for the Horn of Africa region. Hello to you, Alan. Thank you for speaking to France 24. Just want to begin, first of all, the internet blocked in Sudan. Right now, it's very difficult to verify the disputing claims of which side controls which strategic site. What have you been hearing?
Well, there's a lot of fog of war right now, as you would expect. The two sides are battling things out, both in Khartoum, where obviously a lot of people are focused right now, but also across many other parts of the country. This is one of the reasons this was such a nightmare scenario, is this civil war will not be confined just to one city or one area. Both sides had bases across the capital and across the country. And what we're hearing is that there's a lot of fighting, not just in Khartoum, but in cities and towns around the country, including over bases, army bases from both sides, and strategic airports and things of that nature. So it's very worrisome. Again, this looks a lot like a worst case scenario.
Yeah, and that's playing out in the death toll we're seeing. It's already very large, and we could expect it to probably get much larger. Negotiations were ongoing. What do you think led to this breakdown between the army and the RSF?
Well, I think it'll take some time, for the smoke to clear, for it to become a bit more obvious exactly what led to it. In the days leading up to the outbreak of fighting, there was a lot of escalatory moves between both sides. This was in the context of the final negotiations that were occurring between these two military camps related to the promised handover of power from the military to civilians and the restoration of civilian rule. They had promised to agree on essentially a roadmap for integrating these forces. So the army was demanding that the paramilitary force integrate and fall under its chain of command quite quickly, whereas the head of the paramilitary force, General Hameti, enjoys his autonomy, has grown very powerful, and prefers to essentially stay outside the former army for quite a long period of time. That was the formal reason for these tensions rising. But this has been a core tension all along since these military actors seized power from Omar al-Bashir, who was overthrown in 2019 in the popular revolution. In the last days of Bashir's regime, he had allowed a very fragmented, factional, divided security force, partly so none of them were strong enough to overthrow him in a coup. And so what did happen when he was overthrown is essentially it was military rule by committee. And the question all along was, would these armed actors be able to refrain from their own hostilities long enough to allow the country to stabilize? And unfortunately, those worst fears now seem to be coming true.
Yeah, oftentimes it seems sort of like one step forward, two steps back. What are the consequences of more instability in Sudan in terms of hopes for democracy, the humanitarian situation, or even Bashir's defunct party?
Yeah, I think it's too early at the moment to say exactly how this will play out in regards to whether or not that means the entire political process is back to square zero or not. I think diplomats hope that if they could reach a ceasefire soon, that means the parties can continue on towards restoring civilian rule and allowing economic assistance to flow in and generally stabilize the situation. However, if this continues to escalate, we're looking at an entirely new picture. Sudan is in the middle of a very unstable region itself. It borders Libya, Chad, Central African Republic, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Egypt to the north. Obviously, instability in Sudan will not stay in Sudan. So if this really falls apart, there's going to be even bigger questions than whether or not we can get civilian rule back in Sudan. It'll be a proper regional disaster, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's unclear how we get to a ceasefire. The army's saying it's not interested in negotiations with the RSF at the moment. What can Sudan's external partners do?
Well, there needs to be unified insistence that there be a ceasefire. We probably need to see some leaders of powerful Arab countries trying to get the top two antagonists, General Burhan and General Hemedti, on the phone, demanding they have a ceasefire. Meanwhile, I would like to see a very high-level emergency delegation, for instance, from the African Union, perhaps from some regional states. And I think more collective action from Sudanese is something that we would start seeing, where all the groups who are not part of this war, who realize that this is completely devastating and needless and senseless, that they would, close ranks and really rally as Sudanese, demanding that this conflict end. But it will take a lot of effort at the moment. As you say, there's no signs that either side's willing to de-escalate.
And real quickly, Alan, we're running out of time. What was the humanitarian situation in Sudan before this latest infighting?
Sure, the humanitarian situation has been really terrible. Part of the leverage against the military actors has been that there was a lot of economic support that was cut off to Sudan in an attempt to pressure the military actors to hand over power. So we've seen Sudan's economy continue to deteriorate. The poor economic situation was one of the reasons, one of the chief reasons that Bashir himself got overthrown in 2019, and that just has continued to worsen and worsen. So the humanitarian indicators are not good. They're very grim, and things are about to get a lot worse.
Alan, thank you very much for that analysis and context. Alan Boswell speaking to us from the International Crisis Group.
Thank you.